He toasted his future without mentioning me. I spent the last of my money on a dress that he ridiculed in front of everyone. That night, he showed me what humiliation tasted like. 3 days later, I showed him what exposure felt like. I went to a party where no one invited me and took his golden life to pieces. The first time I realized Travis didn't love me was when he really laughed at me in front of 9 strangers while the waiter handed me the check I couldn't afford. I'm Maya, 28, and I work as an administrator at a small but beautiful art gallery in downtown Seattle. I love the smell of old paint, worn wood floors, and the kind of silence that feels full. I'm a soft person, I think. I grew up being told to be understanding, to be kind, to forgive quickly and speak slowly. That's exactly who I was when I met Travis. He was the kind of man people orbit. Loud. Confident. The kind of guy who said things like, just being real after cutting someone down. At first, I thought he was refreshing honest. Now I know he was just cruel in nice clothes. So when he invited me to dinner with his co-workers at Skyline, this insane panoramic restaurant I've only ever walked past, I panicked. This was big. 2 years together, and I'd never met this side of his life. I wanted to look perfect. I spent 3 days agonizing over what to wear, skipping lunches to afford a silk dress in the stormy gray color that reminded me of the sky before it rains. The night of the dinner, I curled my hair. I did my makeup like a tutorial I watched 3 times. My hands shook as I zipped up my boots. I was nervous but hopeful. Maybe this was the moment he'd show me he was proud. That I wasn't just someone he kept hidden behind excuses and sarcasm. Instead, the second we got to the table, he looked at me and said, "That's what you picked?" Bold. He didn't say it kindly. Everyone heard. My stomach dropped. I tried to laugh it off, but it was the kind of laugh that dies halfway out of your mouth. I sat down quietly while everyone sipped cocktails with names I didn't recognize. He never introduced me. I was just there. Then he started talking loudly about his job, his projects, his team, his executive strategies. Everyone listened. I didn't understand most of it. And then, between sips of some expensive bourbon, he looked over and said, "Maya works at an art gallery. You know, the kind that sells paintings nobody wants to buy." They chuckled. Even the waiter glanced at me like I might break. I tried to smile again. My face hurt from smiling. But nothing prepared me for what came next. Right after dessert, when people were finishing their drinks, Travis leaned back in his chair, looked directly at me, and said, "You know what, guys? I've been thinking, I'm not really into this anymore." He waved a hand toward me like I was some dish he didn't order. "I think it's time to move on. Just being honest." Then he stood up and left. And the waiter brought me the check, $459. I sat there frozen, clutching the check like it might catch fire in my hands. Around me, silverware clinked and people murmured, but everything sounded like it was underwater. My mouth was dry. I couldn't speak. I just stared at those numbers, $459.00, like maybe if I blinked hard enough, they'd disappear. They didn't. No one said anything. Not a single person at that long, shining table of polished professionals even looked at me. They just kept chatting. One guy scrolled on his phone. A woman stirred her drink. The world didn't stop for my humiliation, it didn't even slow down. I stood up too fast. My chair scraped against the marble floor, loud and shrill like a scream I couldn't make. I muttered something like, "Excuse me," grabbed my purse, and backed away from the table like a ghost at her own funeral. No one stopped me. The elevator ride down was the longest 30 seconds of my life. I stared at my reflection in the mirrored walls. My lipstick was smudged. There was mascara under one eye. The silk dress I'd saved so hard for suddenly looked cheap, like a costume I'd worn to play a part one was never meant for. I kept whispering to myself, "You're okay. You're okay." But I wasn't. Outside, the cold hit me like a slap. The Seattle air was damp and the wind carried that salty sting from the sound. I didn't even know where to go. I just started walking. My heels clicked against the sidewalk like tiny hammers nailing the night shut behind me. I made it to the bus stop, and when I sat down on the icy bench, my whole body shook. I didn't cry at first. I just sat there, staring at my hands like I didn't recognize them. Then I reached into my purse and saw my wallet, my card, and a receipt from the dress store, $189. I had $14 left in my account. That's when I cracked. The tears came fast, hot, and ugly. Not graceful, cinematic tears, real ones. Snot, hiccuping breaths, shoulders shaking so hard I had to grip the bench to stay upright. I buried my face in my hands and cried like a child, like the pain had been waiting for an excuse to pour out of me. 2 years. 2 years of subtle jabs, of just jokes, of being made to feel small while he smiled at me like he was doing me a favor. I told myself it wasn't abuse, that he didn't mean it, that I was being too sensitive. But tonight? Tonight, he'd ripped the mask off. When I got home, finally, somehow I stepped into my tiny apartment and just stood there in the dark. My phone buzzed in my purse, but I didn't look. I kicked off my shoes, peeled off the dress like it was toxic, and collapsed on the floor in my underwear, the carpet rough under my skin. I laid there staring at the ceiling. And I whispered, why wasn't I enough? That night, I didn't sleep. I just kept replaying it, his voice, the laughter, the silence, the check. The way I'd smiled when he told me about the dinner. God! I'd been excited. Hopeful. Around 2:13 a.m., I finally picked up my phone. One unread message. Not from Travis. Of course not. He wouldn't say sorry, he never did. It was from a woman named Joan, one of the dinner guests. Hey, I know tonight was rough. I just wanted you to know something. Travis isn't who he says he is. He's not an executive. He's not even on the leadership team. A lot of us suspect he faked parts of his resume. There's talk of an investigation. I'm sorry you were treated like that. You didn't deserve it. I stared at that message until the screen dimmed. My heart didn't know what to do with it. Relief? Rage? Confusion? All I felt was this enormous hollow in my chest, like my trust had been scooped out and thrown away. I thought about all the times I'd defended him to my friends. He's just blunt. He means well. He's had a hard life. But he was a liar. A coward. A mirror that only reflected himself. And now the mask had slipped, not just for me. For everyone. The next morning I called in sick. My voice cracked when I spoke. My boss didn't ask questions, he just said, take the time you need. I spent the day in bed. Not scrolling. Not watching. Just feeling. Feeling everything I'd shoved down for 2 years, the gaslighting, the moments I'd doubted myself, the tears I'd hidden. I felt like a shattered version of the girl I used to be. But in that silence, something else began to grow. Not strength, not yet. But a seed. A spark. Something that whispered, this isn't the end. And then a notification. Travis's birthday was in 3 days. His parents were throwing him a party. A big one. He told them he had huge news to share, probably about the fake promotion he bragged about for weeks. I stared at that reminder on my phone. And for the first time since that night, I smiled. Just a little. I wasn't done. I didn't leave my apartment for the next 2 days. Not out of grief, not really. I was watching. Travis had blocked me on Instagram within an hour of the dinner. Classic move. But he forgot that his account was public and that I had eyes everywhere, friends, co-workers, even old classmates who still followed him out of habit. All it took was one scroll through his tagged photos and I found it. A picture from the dinner. There he was, glass raised, grinning like the king of the world. Someone had captioned it. The man of the hour. Big things coming, executive life. I nearly threw my phone across the room. He had used that night. That moment. That table full of people I thought mattered to him, to stage his fantasy life. While I sat there like a joke in my thrifted heels, being dismantled piece by piece, he was scripting the next chapter of his lie. That rage started to burn. Slow and hot. It felt clean. Different from the sadness. Like someone was finally waking up inside me, shaking off the sleep of 2 years of excuses. I started digging. Joan's message had opened the door and I kicked it off the hinges. Turns out, Travis was never in charge of any team. He was a strategy analyst, which sounded fancy but meant he was junior staff, barely above entry level. His big project? A mid-level report someone else wrote that he presented because the actual lead was on paternity leave. The promotion he told everyone about? Didn't exist. And that executive mentor he claimed to be meeting every Friday night? I found the guy's LinkedIn. He didn't know Travis. Like at all. I felt sick. All the Sunday nights he'd been working late. All the missed calls. The weekends he said he needed space to decompress from leadership stress. He wasn't decompressing, he was disappearing. Into bars, into God knows whose bed, into his own fantasy where he got to be someone. But the worst part? He dragged me into the fantasy with him. Used me as a prop. Something to discard once the story got too real. That night, I stared at myself in the mirror. No makeup. Puffy eyes. One of his old sweatshirts I hadn't yet thrown away. I looked like someone else. Someone quieter. Smaller. And then something snapped. I took that sweatshirt off. I cut it up right down the middle, then again and again. Fabric tearing like a scream let loose. I threw it in the trash, shaking. I wasn't that girl anymore. The next day I sent Joan a message. I'm going to his birthday party. I think it's time people knew who he really is. She replied in less than a minute. About damn time. His parents lived in a giant house in Queen Anne. Hilltop view, ivy-covered fence, one of those homes with a grand staircase and family photos in ornate frames. I'd only been there once, and back then I was too nervous to notice the details. This time I noticed everything. His mom opened the door with that warm, sparkly look only mothers can do. Maya. Oh, sweetheart. It's so good to see you. Travis said you two had a little disagreement, but I told him, you don't let a girl like her go. She laughed. I smiled. That's sweet of you. Inside, the place was glowing with soft lights, jazz music playing low. People mingled with champagne, some nibbling on little plates of charcuterie. His dad was holding court near the fireplace, bragging about Travis's new role. Apparently, Travis had told them he was getting flown to New York next quarter. Head of Strategic Development, they said proudly. I almost choked on my breath. Travis hadn't seen me yet. I kept to the edges, watching, waiting. And then he walked in, wearing a navy suit too sharp for someone who lies as easily as breathing. He saw me. His face twitched, just for a second, but he pasted on a smile like a mask that had been used too many times. Maya, he said, too loud, too cheerful. Didn't expect to see you here. Clearly, I said. My voice didn't shake. That surprised me. His parents were nearby. People turned. I could have made a scene right then. I could have screamed or thrown a drink or told him to rot in hell. But I didn't. I waited. Waited until his mother tapped her glass and said, everyone. Travis has something to share. He cleared his throat. Smiled that practiced, charming smile. Yeah, thanks everyone for being here. It's been a huge year, and I've got some pretty exciting things in the works. My team just landed. I stepped forward. Travis, I said softly, but loud enough to hush the room. Before you go on, I think they should hear the whole story. His face drained of color. I think your parents should know that you're not leading any team, that you're not being promoted, that you made fun of me in front of your coworkers, then left me with a $459 check. Gasps. Someone dropped their glass. His mother's mouth parted. You told me to my face you didn't want me anymore, I continued. Fine. But you lied to everyone else. You made me feel worthless to build yourself up. And I let you. For 2 years. That's on me. He started stammering. Maya, don't do this. I'm done, Travis. I turned to the room. He's not who he says he is. And I hope one day he learns how to be. Silence. Then his father spoke, voice low but cutting. Is that true? Travis tried to laugh, but it caught in his throat. And I walked out, into the cold, crisp night air, where the sky stretched wide and dark above Seattle, and I, for the first time in years, could breathe. I didn't cry after I left the house. Not in the car. Not in the parking lot where my breath fogged the windshield. Not even when I got home and peeled off my coat with trembling hands. There were no tears left. Just a strange, pulsing stillness, like my body had finally stopped fighting itself. But I didn't sleep that night either. I sat on the floor of my bedroom, knees to my chest, a glass of red wine in one hand and my phone in the other, rereading the text Joan had sent after the party. That was legendary. You did what we all wanted to say but didn't have the guts. Everyone was shook. I didn't feel legendary. I felt like I just yanked a knife out of my own stomach in front of an audience. People clapped, sure, but the wound was still bleeding. The truth is, I still loved him. Or maybe I loved the idea of him. The way he looked when he was kind, the nights we stayed up watching old movies, the way he used to brush my hair behind my ear and say, you see people, Maya. That's rare. What a joke. He saw me too. He just saw my softness as something to carve into. Patience as permission. Love as leverage. And still, somewhere deep inside, I kept asking the same question over and over like a broken record. What if I push too hard? What if it's my fault he turned cold? Because that's what narcissists do best. They twist your kindness into guilt, your strength into rebellion, your voice into noise. It wasn't until I opened my old journal that the dam finally broke. I hadn't touched it in months. But flipping through it, I found something I'd written last spring, in the middle of one of our fights, the one where he told me I was embarrassing when I asked to meet his parents. I feel like I'm always trying not to ruin things. Like if I just stay small enough, I won't be a problem. My handwriting was crooked. Shaky. I pressed my fingers to the page like I was touching a younger version of me. One who still thought maybe if she just tried harder, she'd finally be chosen. I curled up on the floor, clutching that notebook like a lifeline. And I finally sobbed, not for Travis. Not even for the relationship. But for the girl who kept waiting to be seen when all she ever did was stand in plain sight. 2 days later, Travis texted me. Just a simple, "Can we talk?" I stared at the message for a full minute, then laughed out loud. A sharp, bitter sound that scared my cat. No apology. No explanation. Just a casual request like I hadn't detonated his image in front of his entire family. I didn't reply. But I did go out. That afternoon, I walked to the gallery where I worked and asked my manager if I could take on the youth art mentorship program that just opened up. It was extra hours, extra responsibility, and for the first time in a while, I felt like I had something real to give. "Are you sure you have the bandwidth?" he asked gently. I nodded. "I think it's time I stopped shrinking." He smiled. "Welcome back, Maya." And just like that, something inside me began to repair. But Travis wasn't done. A week later, he showed up outside the gallery. It was pouring, typical Seattle storm. I was closing up, umbrella in one hand, keys in the other, when I saw him standing by the door like some tragic movie character. "Don't," I said before he could speak. He held up his hands. "I just need 5 minutes." I didn't say yes. I just stared. So he started talking anyway. "My parents won't talk to me," he said. "They think I'm a fraud. Joan stopped speaking to me. My boss put me on probation. You ruined everything." And that's when the switch flipped. I stepped closer. The rain was soaking through my coat, but I didn't care. "No, Travis. You ruined everything. You lied. You used me. You made me feel like I was crazy every time I asked for basic respect." I was under pressure, he snapped. "You don't know what it's like to be expected to succeed every second of your life. And I was expected to shrink myself to keep you from falling apart." My voice cracked, but I didn't stop. "You didn't love me. You loved the way I made you feel. And when I stopped being easy, you made me pay for it." He opened his mouth. Closed it. "Then I didn't mean to hurt you." I looked at him. Really looked. The rain running down his face, the way his mouth trembled, his eyes darting like a kid caught cheating. And for the first time, I felt nothing. Not love. Not hate. Just a quiet, grounded knowing. This man will never have power over me again. "You did," I said. And I survived. Then I walked past him, down the steps, into the rain, my coat clinging to me, my hair plastered to my skin, my chest cracked wide open but somehow, lighter. He didn't follow. And I didn't look back. After that night, there was a silence that didn't feel peaceful. It felt like a vacuum. No calls. No texts. Not from Travis, not from his family, not even from Joan. The noise had stopped, but so had the attention, the drama, the adrenaline. What was left behind was a thick stillness that settled over my life like dust. I'd get home, throw my keys in the same ceramic dish by the door, and stare into the apartment like I didn't belong in it. Every corner reminded me of him. The plant he bought me on our 6-month anniversary, dying now, of course, the wine glasses we never used, even the pillow on my couch with a missing button where his head used to rest. It was like walking through the aftermath of a fire. No flames. Just the scorch marks. Some nights I sat in the kitchen with the lights off, clutching a mug of tea I never drank, staring at the screen of my phone, quiet, blank, as if it, too, had abandoned me. I wasn't just mourning him. I was mourning the version of myself I'd been with him. The girl who thought patience could change people. The girl who excused red flags because she didn't want to be too dramatic. The girl who believed that love meant enduring. That version of me was gone now. But the new me? I didn't know her yet. So I drifted. Work helped a little. The mentorship program started, and I found myself sitting cross-legged on gallery floors with teenage artists, listening to them talk about brush strokes and heartbreak and how art was the only way they knew how to scream. Something about that hit deep. I saw myself in them, quiet chaos wrapped in soft skin. One of them, a girl named Elena, painted a self-portrait in black and deep red. When I asked her what it meant, she said, "It's what it feels like when people see what they want in you instead of who you are." I nearly cried right there. Somehow these kids had more clarity than I ever did at their age. Still, the loneliness came in waves. Like when I saw couples holding hands at Pike Place laughing over coffee. Or when I heard our old song in a random Uber. Or when I caught myself reaching for my phone to tell him something small, a bird on the windowsill, the way the clouds looked like brushstrokes, and remembered, he was gone. He chose to be. And that made it worse. He wasn't dead. He was just done. One night, I opened a box of old photos. Us at the coast. Us at his friend's wedding. Me laughing with my eyes half closed while he kissed my cheek. We looked happy. We looked real. But those pictures were just paper versions of lies. I took one out, stared at it for a long time, and whispered, "You loved being seen with me. Not being with me." Then I folded it. Neatly. Like a letter never sent. And dropped it into the trash. Not with anger. Just with finality. Because even in my emptiness, something new had started to form. Not confidence, not yet. But the quiet shape of a boundary. The turning point wasn't some grand revelation. It was a Tuesday. Gray sky, the kind that hangs low like it's tired too. I was walking home from the gallery with a coffee that had gone cold, my shoulders aching from a day of crouching over canvas frames. Rain had started, just enough to soak through my jacket seams. And then I saw him. Travis. Outside a cafe window. Leaning in toward some woman with a grin I knew too well, the one he wore when he was pretending to listen, performing empathy like a well-rehearsed line. Her hand brushed his arm. He laughed, tossed his head back just like he used to with me. And something inside me snapped. Not heartbreak. Not longing. Fury. Not because he'd moved on. But because he hadn't changed at all. 2 years of bending myself in half, trying to be lovable in the way he needed, and he was just out there, unchanged, unbothered, inflicting that same empty charm on someone new. I didn't go inside. I didn't text him. I didn't cause a scene. But I walked faster. When I got home, I tore open my laptop. Not to stalk him. Not to sink into the past. To write. I started with one sentence. This is what it feels like when someone dismantles you with a smile. And then I poured it all out. Everything I hadn't said. Every manipulation, every joke that wasn't a joke, every time he made me feel like too much or not enough, often in the same breath. I wrote about the dinner, about the check, about the way silence can feel like a scream. Hours passed. The sky darkened. My fingers ached. When I was done, I didn't feel healed. But I felt real again. I clicked save. Then I opened a new tab. Created a blog. Posted the piece anonymously. No names. No revenge. Just truth. Within 3 days, it had over 20,000 views. Strangers left comments. I've been there. I felt this in my bones. Thank you for putting this into words. This is what emotional abuse looks like, and people need to hear it. I didn't expect the reaction. I didn't expect the relief. But suddenly, my story wasn't just mine. It was a mirror. And I wasn't invisible anymore. Travis texted again, this time a single line. Nice blog. That was it. I stared at the message for a full minute. Then I smiled. Not because he'd read it. But because he finally saw himself, not through my eyes, not with my softness to cushion the truth, but raw, reflected back without distortion. I didn't reply. I blocked his number. Deleted every thread. Erased his contact. I cleared him out. It wasn't petty. It wasn't rage-fueled revenge. It was hygiene. Emotional hygiene. I cleaned house. And as I lit a single candle in my living room that night, wrapped in a hoodie that smelled like lavender, I realized something. Rage, when wielded with clarity, isn't destruction. It's liberation. A month later, I woke up and didn't think about him first. Not his face. Not what he was doing. Not whether he missed me. Just the quiet hum of morning. The sun leaking through my blinds in warm stripes. The soft rustle of my cat stretching at the foot of the bed. It hit me gently like rain on the roof. I was free. Not in the dramatic, triumphant, dancing on a rooftop kind of way. No. This was a quiet freedom. The kind that settles in your bones when you stop living for someone else's approval. I made coffee. I lit a candle. I didn't reach for my phone. At work, the gallery was getting ready for the spring exhibit. I'd spent the past few weeks mentoring a new artist, a shy, brilliant kid named Malcolm who painted cities from memory. He showed me his latest piece, a chaotic skyline in reds and golds. It's the feeling of starting over, he said. And I smiled so wide it surprised even me. That night, I stayed behind at the gallery to prep a wall panel. I stood on a step stool, stretching up to mount a quote I'd chosen for the center. And the day came when the risk to remain tight in a bud was more painful than the risk it took to blossom. Anais Nin. I'd read it 100 times, but tonight it landed different. I was no longer the bud. I was the bloom, ragged-edged, maybe, but real. Travis's family never reached out again. Neither did he. And that used to scare me, the idea of being left without closure. But now I know, sometimes the silence is the closure. When people show you who they are, and you finally stop asking them to be anything else. I kept writing. Not just blogs, but essays, short stories, little pieces of truth wrapped in fiction. I even started submitting to magazines. 2 got published. For the first time, my voice wasn't just surviving. It was echoing. One Saturday, I took myself out to breakfast. No reason. Just because it was sunny and the world felt like it was spinning a little softer that day. I wore a linen dress, no makeup, hair in a braid. I brought a book I didn't open because I got caught up people watching. A couple sat nearby. The woman was laughing. Not just polite laughing, free laughing. And the man across from her? He was listening. Really listening. Eyes locked. Shoulders tilted toward her like her words mattered. And I realized something so simple it almost knocked the breath out of me. Love isn't supposed to feel like tension. It's not walking on eggshells. It's not shrinking to stay. It's not waiting to be chosen. It's being seen without earning it. I'm not bitter. I don't wish Travis harm. But I do hope, quietly, without malice, that one day he looks in the mirror and sees the mess he made. Not so he suffers, but so he doesn't do it again. As for me, I'm not waiting anymore. Not for apologies. Not for validation. Not for someone to say you were right to leave. I know I was right. The night he humiliated me, I thought it was the most painful moment of my life. But now I know it was just the door. The one I had to walk through to get back to myself. And if anyone's out there right now, sitting in a dark kitchen, phone quiet, heart in pieces, wondering if they're crazy, or dramatic, or asking too much. You're not. You're just waking up.